Why do Brazil and France produce the best players?
A cobrança, lá vem Ronaldinho por cobertura, golaço!
Do you remember when you were a child and anytime a World Cup was approaching, the name Brazil would echo? As if you had to have a license to say it. Brazil was seen as the shining light of football. Even when the team you supported wanted to sign a Brazilian, you were excited. You were anticipating Samba brilliance. Someone who could make the whole world stand still. The next Ronaldinho. It felt like just being from Brazil meant you were automatically one of the best players in the world. In the last 20 years, we have seen Ronaldo, Neymar, Ronaldinho, Rivaldo, Kaká, Pato, Adriano, Vinicius, and Coutinho, names anyone would want in their team. But now there is another nation that has stolen Brazil's limelight. A nation that historically wasn't even a footballing nation. But they've entered the chat. That nation is France.
The French press have been saying it's one last hurrah. Well, that's what he does.
France is now producing the second most footballers in the world.
Pour Kylian Mbappe, c'est magnifique. Une contre-attaque et Paris mène déjà 1-0. Et au second poteau, Mbappé prend le temps de contrôler. Et dans
They have made 4 of the last 7 World Cup finals and have arguably the best football factory in the world, Clairefontaine. And in the last 20 years, they've had Zidane, Thierry Henry, Nasri, Ribéry, Benzema, and Kylian Mbappe donning the Los Blues colors. In the world of football, the game's beauty often lies in the moments of brilliance and ingenuity which amaze and entertain with moments that make you fall in love with the game. It is these instances which make you stand up, applaud, and which make you smile. The moments you share and reminisce with your friends and family. How did these two nations become the hub of football? Why are they producing players of higher quality than any other nations? What is their secret? How do other nations catch up to them? What are we missing? Join us as we uncover the truths of why these nations became talent factories. In both countries, they have a huge emphasis on street football culture. Kids are playing barefoot or concrete football. But why does this help them improve? Street football embraces creativity. There's a quote from Albert Einstein. Creativity is seeing what everyone else has seen and thinking what no one else has thought. This quote sums up street football in both of these countries perfectly. If you go to the banlieues of Paris or the streets of Sao Paulo, you'll see people pulling off the most absurd pieces of skills that most humans wouldn't even think of, let alone try. These kids are untamed. They get to explore the limits of their creativity without anyone giving them in-depth instructions. The single greatest producer of talent. The street and a football. Exploring technical limits. Heads full of dreams and endless possibilities. The ball is always at your feet. Pure joy. 2 hours feels like 2 minutes. Forming a relationship with the ball like no other. Where genius begins. Kids from other nations usually have their first football experience from a coach. This is not a bad thing, but coaches can often limit creativity. At the grassroots levels, every weekend up and down the country, there are coaches shouting at kids. This affects kids as the law of effect tells us actions producing annoying consequences are not learned. For example, if a child is dribbling and is always hearing, "Release it, play simple," this would discourage the player from trying it again as he was punished. Coaches are often joining in training matches and are dominating the games, so at times it feels like coaches are prioritizing themselves over the players. A lot of coaches do not give players key details in sessions on how to improve. A lot of sessions are copied and pasted from the internet, but as a coach, you must coach what you see. Every session must be different. A safe zone does wonders for the confidence of the player, both on and off the pitch. Once a player is just improve technical skills, it develops physical and mental skills too. The contact hours with the ball are non-stop. After school, you either go to your local pub to practice with your teammates, and afterwards, or if kids didn't have training, they would play more outside their home until it got dark. Nobody was standing in long lines. The games were played on concrete pitches, therefore developing balance on the ball and off the ball is vital as the surface is rough. Different games develop different things. Rebounds improve first touch and movement. Wembley develops playing through compact defenses through intricate play or dribbling, headers and volleys too. Competitiveness and bravery. Normally you'll see multi-age ranges competing. Nobody wants to disgrace themselves in front of the older guys, but somewhat earn their respect. Also, the games were highly competitive. Losing was not an option, and bragging rights were the best reward available. All of the above make what you'd call constraints-based learning. This is the manipulation of certain constraints. Different information is presented to the learner. In turn, the learner is then tasked to find their own solutions to the problems faced to meet a goal. Young players learn most when given the freedom to express themselves and their minds are being stimulated and made to think. A coach's job for a young player is to make himself redundant, therefore helping them to get to a level where they no longer need to coach for technical development. The highest level of sport requires an ability to experiment and recover from failure. A learning environment that continuously focuses on the negative will eventually lead to cautiousness and timidity. Using a positive approach, the coach allows the player to fully embrace and utilize their problem-solving skills. Some solutions may not work immediately, but at least there is a clear indicator that the player knows the process of experimentation and is willing to do it without promoting. Nothing is more impressive on the pitch than a creative player. They bring so much joy not only to their teammates but also to the spectators who find something very different from what they are used to. The next reason both nations produce many top-tier talents is poverty. Yes, a nation can be rich and still succeed in sports, but poverty gives you an extra edge. Let's take France, for example. Young adolescents would spend every last minute playing football in underpasses, abandoned basketball courts, or velodromes, perfecting skills before even beginning to play on grass. The concrete jungle of the suburbs became an endless football pitch for the French youth, looking for an escape from day-to-day life, and several of them blossomed into some of the best players in the world. Due to the lack of education in the poverty-driven areas of France and emphasis of street soccer, the kids would play in the streets or the parks on their own. It is here, they argue, where they develop their skills, hone their moves, and become better players. It's no surprise they will. More contact time on the ball, the ability to be more expressive. In Brazil, a lot of kids left school at young ages, which meant they were just playing football on the street, and therefore had more contact time with the ball compared to their counterparts elsewhere. The main reason poverty helps is that hardly anyone tries at anything. But it's not our fault. Let me explain. The average person doesn't know what it means to actually try. Most of us simply have it too good. If you don't come from an impoverished household, becoming a results-oriented being goes against our natural hardwiring. The prototypical person has to develop this paradigm shift to become a predator. This is why growing up destitute is frequently a driving force behind achievement. They have to perform an attempt. Let's face it, the majority of us aspire to be footballers, but if we didn't make it, no problem. We had university or something else to fall back on. Those who have overcome a challenge need the real outcome, so they may feel somewhat secure in knowing they will never again return to a difficult emotional state. Also, France is arguably the hardest country to become a professional footballer. In England, we have 4 professional leagues. In France, there are 2. In London, you have 17 professional clubs. So if I don't make it at Arsenal, I can't make it at Fulham or Leyton Orient. In Paris, there are 2. If you can't make it at PSG, the only other option is Paris FC. Even if I do make it at PSG, they can just sign a player for £200 million in my position and I'm redundant. This means that for young Parisians to get a chance at PSG, they must beat all the competition and compete with PSG's extensive stars they buy every summer. The third reason these two nations produce many wonder kids is due to the sun. Yes, this sounds very weird, but the sun is genuinely a factor in creating top athletes. Brazil is located near the equator, and most of France's teams come from African descent, which is near the equator. But why does being near the equator matter? It matters because of UV light. UV light increases vitamin D production. Back in 2010, a study from the University of Oregon concluded that athletes who did warm weather training performed 4 to 8% better, which is a large margin in competitive sports. Vitamin D also helps reduce injury risks and benefits muscular functions and adaptations to strength training. Sir Alex Ferguson installed tanning boots at Manchester United's Carrington Training Complex. Warm weather training also improves cardiovascular fitness. This is why all the major teams in the top 5 leagues often train abroad in summer or even winter breaks. The heat is a stress on the body, which makes training more challenging. The blood thickens and the heart has to work harder to pump oxygenated blood to the working muscles. The body adapts to this by increasing blood plasma volume, which means they are able to play for longer periods of time. These factors give both Brazil and France a massive advantage when developing young players who go on to be the best in the world and win the Champions League and Ballon d'Or. Is there anything we missed out? Anything you agree or disagree with? Give us your thoughts below.
Alex lives in this shack with 4 relatives. There's not much of value here, but Alex's football trophies mean the world to him.